Everybody, this is Jim at SP500chart.com, where we use time-honored techniques to understand modern markets, featuring daily technical analysis videos of the S&P 500 index. I'm going to read this to you, then we're going to take a look at an interesting chart that not only teaches us a lot about technical analysis, but it's interesting. I believe this could be a tremendously bullish setup. So let's take a look at the chart of ARNA Pharmaceuticals. But before we do, I'm going to remind you that www.sp500chart.com and this video are for educational purposes only, and nothing stated at the site or in the video is intended to be used as investment advice. I can draw lines on charts, but you have to draw your own conclusions from your own research, and you need to be making investment decisions that are suitable for your personal financial situation, and I'll add in here, and also suitable for your personal ability to assume and live with risk. Finally, I'm not a licensed financial professional. I'm just a guy that draws lines on charts. Okay, we're starting out with a really long-term view of ARNA Pharmaceuticals. And why are we doing it like this? Well, because I think there's something to be learned here. The first thing is we see that there have been a series of highs that were set initially in late 2000. And then there was a peak or two in 2006, another little move up in 2007, which, by the way, if we look at this entire 2-year period here, we see that this really formed a symmetrical triangle that in this case broke to the downside, setting up bad news for ARNA. You'll see that there was a big move up in the middle of 2010. This was when their new drug candidate, olcacerin, was submitted to the FDA for approval, and it had a good safety profile, but the FDA panel rejected it. And this candle right here is the process of two things. First off, there was, just prior to the panel, some stink raised about tumors in female rats that were given very high doses of olcacerin. And that took ARNA down from probably this high 6s, the 7 range, down to around the mid 4s, maybe low 4s. Then it slid a little bit more, and then finally when the FDA panel rejected olcacerin, and really many felt that the panel was not that well informed, but and some people said ARNA was not that well prepared to address some of the issues that were brought out. By the way, just as an aside, if you don't give olcacerin to female rats, most of them are going to get tumors anyway, so it wasn't like this was a big surprise, but just to err on the side of safety, the FDA said, nah, we're not going to approve it. And big gap down the next day. So keep that in mind. This all, well, let's move in to a 3-day chart. Here we go. So this was rat tumor day, around here, around the 4s or so, and that was maybe for a couple days. I don't remember exactly. Then this was the big gap down. The big gap down on non-approval. Finally, for about a year and a half, ARNA just kind of dipped around and made something of a fairly bullish-looking bottom, which finally broke out. And what happened? Well, the ARNA did their homework, met the FDA's questions with answers, and olcacerin was approved under the trade name Belviq. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the technical differences between Belviq and other drugs that are being either brought to market shortly or still pending FDA approval. But I will say this, Belviq is a new drug totally. A competitor is Qsymia. It is not a novel compound. It is a combination of two already available generic drugs. So there's some question there about whether or not would anybody pay a premium for Qsymia, knowing that the two drugs that go into it are already available as generics. So couldn't a formulary put this together themselves? That's a legitimate question. But let's talk mostly now about the ARNA chart. The first thing I want you to see is that ARNA has been in a trading range that is centered right around about the high to mid eights. And it's been there for about 10 months. And nothing much has happened. Why? Well, there are a couple reasons. And the fundamental reason is they're waiting for the final scheduling of Belviq. FDA approved that it should be a Schedule 4 drug, but the DEA has to come out and finalize that. So, to make a long story short, until we get news from those in power, it's kind of in a holding pattern. Additionally, there's pending European approval, either of those could be a tremendously bullish catalyst. And this is why I think this has the potential to be very bullish. The first reason is, if you look, where has ARNA been finding support ever since the approval took place? It has been finding support right around $7. Now, why might that be? Well, I think it's because there were a lot of people who got burned back here. They bought for $7 and then they got slaughtered. And I know that for a fact because I was one of them. I'd been buying ARNA through this leg up right here, but I added over aggressively right around the high sixes, and there, that just, when the bad news hit, I was willing to sit through this rat tumor nonsense because I didn't think that was really critical. But when the FDA felt it was critical, that was very painful. Which, by the way, I sold all of my shares in ARNA pre-market. And it made me look smart for about a year and a half because my pre-market order went through in the 260s. So I felt like a genius until it gets approval. And all of a sudden now I'm going, dadgummit, if only I'd held those shares I bought at 7. So psychologically, I was ready to buy back. But I wanted it at 7. So I think I probably was not alone in that. A lot of people, once it got over the high that had been achieved in 2010, it wanted to hold that and has held that for 10 months. Additionally, if we back out on this chart and we take a look at this long-term trend line here, we are also over that long-term trend. And that is a very, very good sign. Now, we have been in a pattern that is pretty well recognized. It is another symmetrical triangle. And you can see that with the formation of this pattern, we have all of the hallmarks of a consolidation having being the process that is taking place in between these two blue lines. Mostly, we see that there has been a general decrease in volume. There was a high volume breakout over this trend line, then a fairly high volume sell-off, and then decreasing volume all throughout here. We had a little bit more high volume back here in January. You can see that little volume spike here. But then, you know, some folks were scared out back in the middle of January. But we've stayed in this pattern. The other thing I want to show you is a lot of times when you have a consolidation pattern, you will also have what I would call kind of a foundation to it, or a skeleton, if you will, that as we get further and further into the latter part of the pattern, we start to see smaller moves. And often that will result in kind of an intermediate trend line that develops somewhere inside that pattern. And often that intermediate trend, why did that move? I thought I had that put just right. There we go. Often that intermediate trend line is the midline of the pattern. So you can see that this line has a tendency to kind of be not a mirror. It's not really a mirror image, but you can see that this line gets played with quite a bit. Right now, it appears to me that ARNA is in another fairly recognizable pattern, and that is we are, I believe, excuse me, I believe we may be in the formation of a head and shoulders pattern, inverted head and shoulders pattern down here, and for all practical purposes we can use this midline pretty much as our neckline to that pattern. And the head and shoulders, inverted head and shoulders I'm looking at so far encompasses this area right here. Additionally, there's a smaller potential head and shoulders pattern that is developed right here. And basically what I'm seeing is if ARNA can get over this little trend line right here, that should set up an attack on this line. And if it can successfully attack this line, we would measure the depth of this head, and we would see that that should mount an attack in the high 9s on this upper trend line. If that attack takes out this upper trend line, then we can we're fortunate to be able to have a minimum target from this consolidation pattern, and I'm pretending like maybe it takes it out some way down the road, and that gives us a target in ARNA if it breaks to the upside of about $18. However, I have a tendency to think that there's more upside potential than just that. And it would not surprise me if things go ARNA's way with European approval, with the scheduling of Belvique. Then I could pretty easily see an eventual move to this top line right here, which is really pretty simple. Let's back out. All I did was I took the bottom trend line here, measured the depth of this channel, and snapped it up here, because oftentimes the depth of your dips end up being the height of your peaks. So that's a very simplistic thing. If that did come true, then this whole consolidation pattern that's taken place over the past 10 months could very well be one of those cases where the old-time technical analysis used to say the flag flies at half-mast. And what they mean by that is you come up with a strong move, then you consolidate, and oftentimes the target of the move that comes out of that consolidation is equal to the move that led to this formation. So this would be a flagpole, a flag, but flying at half-mast, meaning there could be a good bit more room for ARNA to move. So look, here's the deal. ARNA is a heavily shorted stock. It is way shorted. And many of the shorts are trapped back here in the twos. They just never saw this coming. They woke up to the same thing that I woke up to back in 2010. And that was a big move against them. So I think that if this pattern breaks right here, I believe to the upside, if it does break to the upside, I believe there will be some really rapid moves upwards as roughly, I think, 25 million shares. Or is it 25%? Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. It's a bunch of shares short in ARNA Pharmaceuticals. So look, guys, I just thought I'd throw this out as an interesting look at some fairly recognizable patterns. And even though a lot of people would swear up and down you can't use technical analysis with a pharmaceutical, with the drug stock, especially with the speculative one like ARNA, but you know, I'm seeing patterns here. And I think if we can get some breakouts, and if the news breaks in ARNA's favor, I believe we'll see some interesting things in the weeks, months, and even years ahead. Now that was free of charge. All I ask is that you come to sp500chart.com. Come check out the website. I do a daily technical analysis video of the S&P 500. That's available at sp500chart.com for a very reasonable subscription rate. It comes out to about $1 per video. So look, guys, come over there, check it out. Thanks for watching this, and remember, your stops are your friends.